Greetings, opera lovers. Live from Bloomfield, Connecticut, it's Rona. Yesterday, I traveled to New York with Mr. Opera to go to the performance of Parsifal at the Met. It was my first time live hearing this. About 5 years ago, I saw the HD production, and what a difference live versus the theater makes, not just in appreciating voices, but the production as well. I have to say that although it was the same exact production, the overall effect was monumentally different. Sitting in the theater, you get to see the stage and the sides of the stage where it's sort of like a conceit of the director, showing you the way the lighting is strung out, some of the technical things that are going to be used for the production. You see all the time the strewn about chairs. After the priests or monks sit in them, they kind of throw them around. Whereas in the HD production, maybe it was shown, but I really don't remember that. I remember a lot of close-ups of the faces. The biggest difference between the HD and the live was that Act 3 live was completely different. Because when you see Parsifal entering, sitting in the audience, and you see him coming out from that enormous stage, alone and ragged and really like a world-weary person, it has an effect. It did not have that effect on the movie screen. Also, watching the entire ceremony of Kundry holding up the Grail, of Parsifal having the spear go into the cup, all of those things in this large space was very different and way more moving. In fact, I have to say that the last act of Parsifal was one of the most moving acts of any opera I've ever seen. I was very choked up at the end, and tears were forming in my eyes, although I did not shed a tear. Another thing that was an interesting difference of going to see this live versus experiencing it in a theater, I would say the house was pretty sold out, if not 100% sold out. You could hear a pin drop through the entire performance. There were hardly any coughs or sneezes, and during the third act, it was particularly quiet. I think that people were mesmerized by what was going on stage. Now, a lot of people would like to know what I thought about it. Well, there's already been so much written about the production. I don't know that I can add anything significant except what I thought. And I'm even going to include what my companion, Mr. Opera, thought, because when we went to the Opera House yesterday, I was so lucky to meet so many of my online friends, seeing them again or meeting them for the first time. I would say the opera world is a big community. And those of us that love opera, we like to kind of get together and say hello. So this is in deference to them that I add some words from my husband, Stu. So first I'll tell you what he thought, because I asked him this morning, what would you like to say about it? And these were his thoughts. That it was an experience, a literary experience accompanied by music. He was very bored in Act 1 and Act 2, and like me, was riveted for Act 3. Now, I have to say something about Act 1. It starts off with that gorgeous, gorgeous prelude. And then we get Gurnemanz starting his narration. It is such a long narration that after a while, even though Renee Papa, who sang Gurnemanz beautifully, it just seems like it's the same thing over and over, and there's nothing really to hold your attention unless you know this opera note for note. So Stu and I were both kind of in and out of a slumberland during some of Act 1. I have to fault a little bit of this to the staging. Really, nothing happens. And although it was very clear that there was a point of view for the staging, If there's no action, it's hard to stay very interested. A lot of people have spoken about the conducting of Yannick Nézet-Séguin in this Wagner opera. Now, while I'm not an expert in this opera, I have heard it many times. And although the pacing was not overly long, it didn't seem to have enough urgency for me. Now, maybe that was my fault. I don't know. But I would have liked to have heard a little more tight stuff going on in the orchestra. And speaking of the orchestra, oh, whoa, were they fabulous. They filled the hall with the most glorious sound. And while you speak of the orchestra, you must also mention the chorus. It's just a great chorus. The men, who have way more singing to do than the women, were magnificent, especially in the transformation scene, and then later in Act 3. So kind of going down the line for the singers, I've already mentioned Mr. Papa and the conductor. A lot of people want to know what I thought of the two new cast members that are new as opposed to the ones that were in the HD. And that is Kundry Evelyn Herlitzius. I think that's how you pronounce her name. So it's not a voice I like. I've heard her many times live streamed. I was not looking forward to it at all. However, she really pulled it off very well. And although there are parts of her voice that are extremely unattractive, it didn't seem to bother me that much, maybe because it's the way the role is written. The other controversial singer would be Parsifal, Klaus Florian Vogt. It's a very light and childlike sound, but interestingly enough, it fills the house. My biggest problem was that, unfortunately, during the dramatic moments, as in the time where he has to sing Am Vortas die Wunder, he did not have enough dramatic heft to make it astounding, which is what I think you need to have. So while they weren't my favorite singers of the day, they were fine. And many people told me that Mr. Vogt's voice would never fill the Met. He did, and he rode over the orchestra extremely well. Well, to me, the star of the show was Peter Mattei. I think he's a vocal god. His singing, the texture, the grain of his voice was so hauntingly exquisite. He portrayed the agony of Amfortas in a way I don't know that another person could really do. Physically, he's got this large, long body, and he's able to convey to the audience the terrible pain he's in, that it's constant pain. This made the opera really a moving experience. The other principal was Klingsor, whose name is Nikitin. He had a little bit of a controversial start to his career when it was discovered that he was in a heavy metal rock band as a youngster and has swastika tattoos. However, all that has sort of passed by, and his career has made somewhat of a comeback. I thought he was excellent, and he has just the right amount of evil in his voice. I also thought he sounded way better than he did 5 years ago. Maybe that's just me. Off stage, playing Titurel, was Alfred Walker. I thought he was superb. Another offstage voice was she's called a voice, Carolina Pilou. They gave her sort of an ethereal sound, like a haunting sound, and a little bit of echoey. And she also was wonderful. So musically, it was an A+ day. Visually, there wasn't enough going on in the action department. Other than that, I thought it was a moving experience. I'm so glad I went. There really aren't good words to describe how I felt. It was just an emotional experience. It was personal to me. I would highly recommend anybody seeing this opera who's interested in opera, especially if you like Wagner's music. I don't think you'll ever forget it. So that's all for today. It was wonderful seeing all my friends and going to the quiz and meeting all the people involved with the Met. I look forward to my next opera, Louisa Miller, in April. Bye, everyone.